Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, since you mentioned cars, right out of the gate, right, Scheben?
Yeah. Well, it's not like I didn't think it was coming.
But you didn't think it was coming this soon, did you?
No, I was counting on like a second and a half later.
Well, since you mentioned cars, a very interesting thing that I think our class should know about. So what, you mentioned off air a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that we're becoming, here at the farm, we're becoming a shop that seems to specialize in working on cars that others can't seem to fix. Now, you mentioned that, right?
Yes. And we were specifically talking about the limp mode on Mercedes and other vehicles that you guys had figured out. And I think that's one heck of an achievement. And especially when you're getting quotes in the $10,000 plus range to fix it, or up to that range. And the fact that you can do that, I think you have a niche that you should mention on the air, because I think there's a lot of, for example, old Mercedes that are sitting in people's garages that people don't take out because they can't figure out with these computers today, even back in the 90s, that when a car goes into limp mode, it's very dangerous. And you can't, and you're on a highway and you're driving, 30, 35 miles an hour tops, and it becomes very dangerous. So I think you got a heck of a niche right there. You should mention that at least on a semi-regular basis. I think you'll get a lot of customers.
Well, thank you. So class, what limp mode, LIMP mode is? It's a mode that the computer tells the engine and transmission to go into, just enough to get you home. So you're traveling along and the car's computer thinks that something really serious has happened, and it's so serious that it doesn't want the engine to be, burdened, doesn't want the transmission to shift, and it will let you go, maybe 30 miles an hour, tops, maybe 35, maybe 39, depending on the car and the computer. So what happens is you're driving, all of a sudden, the car goes into limp mode, and you just can't go, highway speeds. Well, it's really difficult to figure this out in lots of these cases, and we've worked on a bunch of cars, and we figured out how to fix it. The dealers, you bring it to them, they'll tell you, transmission shot, and $4,000, the minimum plus labor, and, we can put a transmission in for you. But the bottom line is they're telling you that the job to fix your car is going to cost more than your car's worth. Or they'll tell you that the job to figure out what's wrong with your car, just to diagnose the problem, will cost more than the car is worth. And we've seen that firsthand. In Mercedes cases. So we have figured this out, and how to fix it. And literally, believe it or not, we can fix it with maybe 10 cents worth of parts. Literally, in many cases. So here's the tip for today. So a couple of cars came in. One of them is a Mercedes C-Class. That's the compact one. Happens to be a 320, C320, which is the V6. And the instrument panel on this car was not operational. So you couldn't see the digital display. They wouldn't light up properly. And it's a real tough thing because normally you're looking at maybe $1,000 repair to fix that. BMW model 750 came in. Now that's the V12, BMW model 750. That came in. Same problem, but completely different manufacturer, different dash, different instrumentation panel. Same problem though. It didn't light up properly. Couldn't see what the instruments were telling you. You couldn't tell what gear you were in, that kind of thing, because that's on the dash. Well, here's what we did. This is a zero cost fix. Zero. We put it out in the sun and let it bake for 3 days. And the logic here is that the traces on the circuitry of the instrument cluster are so close together that dust and moisture would allow electricity, minute amount of electricity, to go from one trace to the other and confuse the instrument cluster computer. And that fixed the problem. Can you imagine that? So here we have computer-controlled dashboards where the electronics is so tight, so complex, that dust and moisture cause it to fail. Now, who would engineer something like that? Well, that would be Mercedes and BMW, for sure. And the next thing I'd like to say, since Rich mentioned cars, is there's another problem that you may come across, and that is a grounding problem. So you all know that it takes 2 wires to light up a light bulb. You know that. If you look at the zip cord to your lamp, you'll see that there are 2 wires inside the insulation. I mean, you don't even have to open it up. You just feel it, and you'll see the 2 wires there. So there's one, in cars, there's a positive and a negative. Positive is labeled red usually, and the negative is labeled black. Well, to save wire, what the automakers have done is they said, well, we don't have to run the black wire everywhere, to every light bulb, to every switch, what we'll do is we'll use the chassis of the car, the frame of the car. So there's a black wire everywhere. You just find something that's metal, whether it be under the dashboard or under the hood or in the trunk. Anything that's metal is grounded. So that would be the black wire. The whole body of the car is considered the black wire. But here's where the problem is. They ground from the battery to the engine and to the body of the car and to the transmission. And pretty much everything else taps off the body of the car. The radio, the lighting system, the security system, pretty much everything. Well, those ground wires corrode at the bolt that they are connected to the metal of the car. So think of it as 3 wires, one for the transmission, one for the engine, and one for the body of the car, all going to the negative of the battery. They corrode. And then all kinds of strange things happen. Transmission doesn't work right. The lights don't work right. The security system gets flaky. The engine doesn't work right. And it's all because of one of those 3 wires. I'm not kidding. So I just wanted to give you that little hint. And corroded grounds that's a big problem with today's cars because of all the computers in today's cars. Rich, any comments?
Well, as you know, Vince, cars is not really my forte, but I really think you should, pardon the redundancy here, but I think you should really mention this on a regular basis, this niche that you and your son figured out, because I think there's a lot of old cars, especially Mercedes and BMWs, sitting in people's garages that have looked into this limp mode fixing, and it's too expensive, or they can't do it themselves because of the computers. So I think you should mention this on a regular basis. I'll bet you get cars from all over the country coming in.
Well, I don't know if I'd like that, but the cars are coming in, and actually we are, at pretty close to the limit of being able to fix them, because we only work on, we don't have like 15 cars all lined up when we work on a little bit on one and then the next one, and we just tell everybody, no, listen, it's going to be soon. We'll have it done. We work on it until we fix it, unless we absolutely get stumped and we put it off to the side for a day and then go back to it. But typically we work on it until it's finished. But the whole point of what you can do, class, is when you go out this winter and the roads get salted, you can think of that, that white film that you see after the liquid evaporates and you've got this white stuff on your windshield and window and car. That's salt. and it's really corrosive. So first chance you get, I suggest you rinse off the bottom of your car. Okay? But you don't want to do it when it's going to freeze. You want to do it, when you have a couple days of non-freezing weather. You want to rinse that salt off if you can, as soon as you can, because it will corrode those connections. And it will cause thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage. And the whole point of this is we have built a society and we've built products that are so complex, we can't live with them. That's the whole point. And it's terrible. So what do you have on the blackboard for today?
Well, since you started about saving money tips, you asked me to create a short list of things under that category, which you kind of started. But then I want to go into some breaking news about what the CDC says and another coup attempt here in America. I'm not going to have time during this break, but let me mention a few saving dollar tips. But I'm just going to go through some real quick. What I've done, we put thermal curtains in the middle of the cabin to separate the cabin from where the wood cook stove is to the other part of the cabin that we don't use too often to make it easier to heat. And of course, the wood cook stove offers us the ability to harvest firewood, which I get right here on my property. Now, those of you who've been listening to me for years on the radio, you know that we don't have any traditional running water, no pressure tank, no hot water heater, so we don't have to deal with the pipes being clogged up, and we use gravity feed water, which we fill up with a garden hose like maybe once a month, and it's so simple, it takes an hour, and it works great. I do not have air conditioning in my cabin. I purposely built it backed up to a northern slope. My solar panel, my garden's on the southern part of the meadow, but my cabin's on the northern slope portion. So in 5 minutes, you open up a few doors and a few windows, and it's cool enough to sleep. And we've only had 2 days, despite a very hot July and August, we've only had 2 days where the inside of the cabin reached 80 degrees. So it's very manageable. In the wintertime, we don't use a refrigerator. We leave our food on the basement floor by the French doors, and it offers a perfect 30 to 35 degrees for the entire winter. I don't waste gasoline mowing my yard, except in the garden area around the raised beds because we have goats. Now, this year, we had one of the best May and Junes we've ever had in my 35 years in Montana. And we had a combination of rain, sun, and cool temperatures, and the grass grew so great, I could almost put a tree stand in some of these grasses because they got so tall, so I have plenty of goat feed probably into beginning in November. So, I use a little common sense, a little logic. I use the interests and hobbies that I have to dovetail with the chores that I need to be done. I also negotiate. I buy dog food because we have Great Pyrenees guard dogs, and we got grizz here on a regular basis. And I've got plum trees, apple trees, pear trees, strawberries, raspberries. Never mind tons of tomatoes in the greenhouses. So I have to make sure that we keep our dogs healthy, and we negotiate bulk prices for dog food, and I'll talk more about that after the break.
Hey, Rich Scheben's with us, and he's in Montana. He lives off the grid. And we're talking about Do Radio, not talk radio. Do Radio. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. He's in Montana, lives off grid. As you know, he's an author. His book is One New York Man's Journey to Off-Grid Living in Montana. We're talking about saving money. And as we spiral down in the United States of America and actually all over the world, economically, socially, and pretty much every other way, saving money is becoming a big deal. So, Rich, you mentioned that you save money by negotiating bulk purchases of dog food. Please continue with that. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that sell dog food. Some are local, some are national, and I do my homework to try to find the most nutritious dog food that isn't GMO, that doesn't have a lot of grain in it, because a lot of our grain has been, nutrients has been slashed via the laboratory to create a longer shelf life on the shelves or on the ground after cutting. So I do as much homework as possible because these Great Pyrenees dogs are big. They're of the giant breed variety. So to feed them is not super cheap, but I try to negotiate when I go into a store better prices. So I buy in bulk. And I was just downstairs. I'm just going through all my saving money tips that I thought of off the top of my head over the last couple of days. I was just downstairs and I cut some parachute cord. I cut about 24 feet so I can use that cord to raise my bow and arrow when I'm hunting out of a tree stand. Now, the reason why I mentioned parachute cord is because you buy it in bulk. You buy it in a big, it's just wound together like a ball of yarn type thing. And I've been using it for years to replace broken boot laces because boot laces aren't cheap. And this parachute cord that I bought in bulk will probably last me the rest of my life for little chores like what I just mentioned about pulling up my bow in a tree stand or boot laces. So when you buy things in bulk, whatever that may be, and it has multiple uses, you'd be surprised how you can save money. And of course, we can a lot of vegetables, we can the meat that we harvest, the fish that we catch, so we don't have to buy too much in the canned food department. And speaking of gardening, just a few things I want to mention. What we do is I have two greenhouses. Okay, one greenhouse cost me literally $500, and I basically bought 16-foot cattle panels. I built a ridge pole, and I put the cattle panels laced over each other. They overlap. And I barely used any wire because once wire is in a certain position for a certain amount of time, it has a memory and it doesn't move. I put some rebar in the ground. I put a wooden lathe connected to the rebar, and I connected that to the bottom of the cattle panels, and then I put the UV-treated plastic over it. And it cost me literally $500 for a 40-foot long greenhouse. So for those of you who are looking to build greenhouses, think about just getting UV-treated plastic, and then once your first layer starts getting a little holey or starts getting ripped a little bit, don't take it down, just put a new layer on top of it. And of course, shade cloth is also mandatory. And when you do your greenhouse, make sure you do it, for example, here in Montana, northwest Montana, 95% of our winds come from either the west or the east. Sometimes a little southwest, things like that, but you want the wind to help pollinate your tomatoes, for example, or whatever you have in there. And the wind will do that. They'll shake them around a little bit, and they'll also, make the bugs flow through there, like, bees and things like that help pollinate your vegetables. If you don't go east and west, and depends what part of the country you're in, then at least have a skirting on the bottom of your greenhouse that you can lift up to make the wind go through. Now, I also allow a few second-year carrots to seed. I'm just whipping through things here, folks, because I have so much information to discuss today. Second-year carrots, let some of them go to seed, which means you don't pick all of them your first year. Let them go to seed, and then you clip them off after they've dried, spread them around the area where you want. You're going to have hundreds, if at least dozens, of new carrots next year. We'll be right back after this break.
Yeah. Rich Scheben's with us, and class, Rich has a full schedule, so please, no calls today. And Rich, you're talking about reseeding carrots. Great idea. Takes no work. No work.
No, it doesn't take any work. The only work it does, it takes a little bit of thought to when you have to purchase them initially, is to make sure you buy open pollinated or heirloom. People are really realizing the differences right now. They're realizing just like off-grid living, the powers that be on the Democrat side are saying, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to shut off your water and power. People are realizing that we're being tracked, surveillance, censorship, editing. People are realizing they're waking up to the difference between, everything from sex to rape, especially pedophilia, vetted legal and illegal immigration, organic and GMO, which I'm talking about now. You got to make sure that you don't buy phony seeds from the Monsanto-type laboratory seed that may have been radiated, that doesn't create new growth, new germination with whatever seed it creates. There's a difference between immune system stimulants and immune system suppressants like 5G and electromagnetic radiation. Remember, open pollinated is the way to go, okay? Don't buy the Monsanto-type laboratory seeds. There's a difference between natural meat and hormones, steroids, antibiotics, and red dye, nutritious soil versus chemical soil that has heavy metals, everything from phony investigations to phony hate hoaxes. People are seeing it. They're waking up to it. So let me go back to some tips for gardening because I have so much news and information that we want to discuss today. Going back to letting seeds do their natural thing and propagate, letting that vegetable. Now, a lot of vegetables, we do a lot of greens here too, like spinach and certain heirloom lettuces. When you come here, like at this time of the year in my garden, and I give tours probably once or twice a week to people because they just want information about off-grid living or gardening or whatever it is. And people are looking for Plan Bs. I let a lot of my heirloom lettuces and spinaches also go to seed. And when you look at my garden right now, you see a lot of dried lettuces and spinaches and the stalks, the canes that I let go to seed. I let the seeds mature, and I cut them down, and I spread them around my garden. So by fall, and especially next spring, by fall I already have baby spinach coming up that sometimes I even harvest. Like last year, we didn't even have a winter here in Montana. We had no winter at all. I think the most snow we had at one time was 6 inches of snow, and I was harvesting lettuce most of the winter here. It's unusual, but that's the way it was. And I also, when you harvest your vegetables, folks, doesn't matter if it's long-term storage in the basement like zucchini where you want to harvest it until late winter, early spring. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be tomatoes at this time of year on your counter. When you pick your vegetables, do not wash them. Leave the natural coating that Mother Nature put on those vegetables. And then it's going to store. Wherever you store it, it's going to last days, if not weeks, if not months, depending on the vegetable, longer. Only wash it right before you're ready to consume it. And I also grow a lot of perennials, okay? One is, all these stuff is on my tour when I share this. I grow an Egyptian onion, and I don't harvest too many of them, but when it grows, it's a perennial. It comes up every year, and when it grows, the onions form on the top of the reed, and then gravity brings the onion down, and then it roots next year in the spring, and it just starts. It just kind of, it's never ending. So I always have what I call a survival garden. Another thing that I grow, which is a perennial, is called lovage. It's classified as an herb, but it gets up to 6-7 feet tall. It's basically a perennial celery. It's a little stronger tasting than celery, but it's a great herb. It's a great supplement in a lot of recipes, and it's great to have in case the crapper hits the fan. I also grow what's called lemon sorrel. For those of you who are into botany, sorrel is one of the 4 vegetables, if you will, in the ASEAC formula for curing cancer and tumors. Sorrel is very healthy, and it tastes lemony, and everybody who tries it just smiles when I give them a little tour. And it's a perennial. It comes up every year. Same with chives. Chives I have to cut down my pink flowers when they bloom because my chive patch is getting so big. Chives are a great onion substitute, goes in almost every dish except for your cereal in the morning. It's just a great thing to have. I also grow asparagus, which is a perennial. I'll get 15 to 20 years per plant. And it's extremely healthy for you as far as fighting cancers and tumors, and it's an immune stimulant big time. I also grow strawberries and raspberries, lots of them. By the time strawberry and raspberry season's over, I am sick of eating those because we have so many. And my strawberries this year, my new canes are up to 6.5 feet tall because we had such a great May and June. Again, the combination of cool temperature, rain, and sun evenly balanced gave all my stuff. Plus, I have grapes as well. I grow them in the greenhouse, and they've grown so much they're shading my tomatoes and my warm weather crops, so I'm going to have to start cutting them back this year because we can't even eat them all. So that's just some money-saving tips that includes gardening. Everybody who has a half an acre of land or more should have a garden. Everybody. So what I want to do right now, Vince, I want to get to some news because I can see I'm not going to get to probably even maybe 20% of what I had planned for today. First article, Google and Facebook are engineered to spread fear about infections to keep the public ignorant of how the immune system works. And the reason why I mention that first is because these big tech companies are, you've heard me mention many times, including today, censorship and surveillance. And this is how they keep the people dumbed down. And as you know, I've given thousands of examples on how we've been distracted, dumbed down, and divided by groups. So this article is very disturbing, but here we go. Today we now have empirical evidence that the WHO, the World Health Organization, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx were all wrong. They were charlatans. They lied. The CDC silently updated their numbers this week to show that only 6% of coronavirus deaths were completely due to the coronavirus alone. This should make everybody angry. The people who've been murdered, raped, lost their businesses, burned their homes, all the murder, rape, and mayhem that's been going on. You've been used as pawns. The rest of the deaths pinned to the China coronavirus is attributed to individuals who had other serious issues going on. Also, most of the deaths are very old Americans with comorbidities. We have said this to you many times. And of note, some of those problematic comorbidities include hypertension, diabetes, and obesity, all of which have significantly controlled, if not completely reversed, during this pandemic. So keep in mind, folks, this week the CDC quietly updated the COVID numbers so you wouldn't notice, but the alternative media has done a good job bringing this forth. Numbers to admit that only 6% of the 154,000 deaths recorded actually died from COVID. That's a little over 9,000 deaths. That's a huge difference. The other 94%, again, had 2 to 3 other serious illnesses, as in other words, comorbidities, and the overwhelming majority were of advanced age. So when you look at, and I'm being very conservative with this number, when you look at mortality rates in America, it starts with 0.0. And then when you take away the old people, 75 and older, especially the ones who were literally murdered in these Democrat cities, very disturbing. The mortality rate starts with 0.00. And I am extremely conservative with that example. So I want to mention a few, since I kind of went into that direction, I want to mention a few articles real quick here about COVID, and then I want to go to some more breaking news, which is very disturbing. Idaho House votes to end coronavirus emergency immediately. We should every state should be ending that. I'm not saying this isn't a virus, but like we've said from day one, it's 99% agenda-driven. We've talked about this, to crash the economy, to delegitimize work, to eliminate free markets and supply and demand, to get rid of cash and create a centralized cryptocurrency, to stop patriotic, peaceful assembly. And yes, peaceful assembly, Democrats, is in the Constitution, the word peaceful, because Democrats are now saying, why should riots be peaceful? It's beyond ridiculous. Yeah, technology controlled by China, along with the UN, the World Health Organization, Soros and Gates and Hollywood. Where are the arrests of these people who are funding this? The social distancing to make people submissive, to break their will, to keep Joe Biden in a virtual reality basement, to eliminate legitimacy of voting and vote by mail so it can be rigged, to eliminate our Constitution, freedom, liberty, and the rule of law, starvation, continue with fake information from the mainstream media, depopulation, free speech elimination, forced vaccines to reduce our immune system, so we have to have immunity passports to work or go anywhere, forced lockdowns, house arrests, 5G towers. I mean, we can go on and on. We're seeing the consequences of decades of inaction towards political correctness, and this is very disturbing. We should all be doing what Idaho is doing right now. Next article. I'm not sad that the effing fascist died tonight, and the left-wing Portland protesters celebrate the murder of a Trump supporter. Peaceful protesters, right? No one's buying it. No one. Next article. Is COVID-19 the trigger for a new world order of economic stagnation and social destruction? Absolutely. I've talked hours about what I call the economic 101. I've talked so many times about the welfare for the rich, printing money out of the thin air, fractional reserve lending, which is now irrelevant, stock buybacks. We've talked about robotics, automation, artificial intelligence taking our jobs. We've talked about the combination of the deflationary, stagflationary, and inflationary consequences to the bottom 93% in great detail. Next article. Will Hillary and the Dems get the civil war they are trying to provoke? That's exactly what we've been talking about for months, folks. That's exactly what the Democrats are trying to do. They've allied with big tech, Hollywood. They've allied with China because they need to create infighting and chaos. They need race wars, gender wars, sexual orientation wars, religious war. They have to be professional pot stirrers. Don't fight.
Rich Scheben with us. Rich, please continue.
Well, thank you, Vincent. As I always try to mention, I appreciate you allowing me to exercise my First Amendment right, where over 1 million combat soldiers gave their life for our freedoms and liberty. That includes our free speech and ability to protect ourselves under the Second Amendment. Next article, 98% fake COVID cases exposed in Texas county audit. Folks, we've been given this information for months. We're not saying that it's 100% hoax. This is a man-made, geoengineered virus. There's no doubt about it. It's proven. But the agenda and the timing is obvious. It's been stamped of approval by the Democrats, the world globalists who are funding everything. Next article. Thousands of Swedes received false positive COVID-19 results due to faulty tests coming from China. Imagine my shock. I want to go back to an article, folks, because there's a few articles coming up that really need to be discussed. When I talked about, will Hillary and the Dems get the civil war they are trying to provoke? And everybody who does any reading and research realizes that we're being distracted, dumbed down, and divided. And we've talked. I know I alone have given thousands in the 9 years I've been on national radio. I've given thousands of examples and evidence to show divide and conquer strategies. And this is basically what they have left, is to foment enough hate that they can justify and rationalize a civil war. And they don't care what group you're in. They don't care if they do it through race or shade of skin pigmentation or sexual orientation or religion, or They do not care. They need enough cover-up to cover the crimes against humanity that they have done. They need to cover up all the free lunch that comes from the central bank corrupt monetary system that takes money from the bottom 93% of people to the 1% elite. They need to cover up all the divide and conquer strategies that they've done. They need to cover up all the hypocrisy, double standards, and brainwashing and how they've used the people and played them, conned them, and used them as pawns. So I'm going to mention a few articles here, and these are all articles, as I mentioned as kind of a disclaimer, all published articles in the public domain. Medical Examiner report, fentanyl in George Floyd's system made his lungs weigh 2 to 3 times more than normal. Next article, Wisconsin Department of Justice. Jacob Blake had a knife when shot by Kenosha police. Next article, Kenosha rioter allegedly shot in the head by Kyle Rittenhouse was convicted pedophile. And I've seen the video, as the majority of the country has. This young man, Kyle Rittenhouse, was basically protecting himself. It was all self-defense. It was all on video and all obvious. Next article. Looting breaks out in Minneapolis after homicide suspect commits suicide. And she hasn't done her job. Looting riots and mayoral ineptitude prompt mass exodus of Chicago residents. And I think I have an article coming up somewhere which shows like 50 people just last weekend were shot in Chicago. And keep in mind, folks, President Trump has offered National Guard help to all the Democrat governors and mayors, and they've been refusing it, despite the Dems inciting murder, rape, and mayhem, and burning of businesses and homes and looting. This is very disturbing. So the reason why I mentioned those last few articles, folks, is because of the fact that when we hear news, okay, the mainstream media, the left, Hollywood, the Democrats, China, the big tech, who are all allied together to take down America with this agenda that we talk about on a regular basis, we need to find out, was there drugs in someone's system? Did somebody resist arrest? Was somebody reaching for a gun? Was somebody reaching for a knife? Was it self-defense, the shooting? When people start looting because someone gets shot because they come from a certain group, and then it turns out after more evidence shows up that the suspect committed suicide and it wasn't murder, we need to sit back, we need to wait and gather the facts. We have to remember, folks, the police are there for our protection. They do not have the ability to fight or flight. They have to fight for the rule of law. Let's give them a little slack. Let's wait for the facts and information to come out before we judge. We'll be right back.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, I believe you mentioned something about the Chinese being allied with big tech. And class, think about it. Of course they are. Of course they are. Apple products are made in China. Of course they are allied with big tech. So that's absolutely clear as the nose on your face, right? And I want to mention something else, get a little clarification from Rich Scheben on this. Rich, you mentioned negotiating for dog food. You have a couple Pyrenees, Great Pyrenees, so they eat a lot. You spend a considerable sum on dog food. How is it exactly that you negotiate? What do you do to get a lower price?
Well, I say I'll buy bulk, and we discuss the unit of measure of what that is. Every manager in every store has a different definition of what a bulk price would be. And I say, now with this COVID scamdemic, it's definitely been an issue where because of supply chain disruptions, I have not done that since March. However, I have bought bulk dog food in the past. And, and we save in many, table scraps goes to the dogs as long as it doesn't have spices in it and things like that. If we have leftover meat, we have a compost pile. We have goats, chickens, and Great Pyrenees dogs. So literally, I can't emphasize that word enough. Basically, nothing goes to waste unless maybe it's a plastic product. Okay? We reuse everything. Like I said, if the goats, chickens, or dogs don't eat it, leftover, and there's not much, it goes into the compost pile. So everything gets used, and when you're in a feed store or a land and home store, any place that sells dog food, it could be an aquarium shop that sells fish. You'd be surprised how many different places sell dog food. Sometimes it could be some really good local dog food, and you have to do a little reading and research about it, and maybe even call the manufacturer of it and find out if you can buy it for bulk. The majority of the time, they will do that. Now, because of the supply chain disruptions, it hasn't been that easy lately. But hopefully with this news that we've come out with today, and much of the alternative media, just like the pandemic over the CDC, basically being 6%, if you remember what I just said earlier, the COVID number, the CDC has quietly admitted that only 6% of the 154,000 deaths recorded actually died from COVID. The rest were comorbidities and advanced age. So we need to be aware of what they've done, not just to America, but to the world, in order to create a communist insurrection, a totalitarian, tyrannical dictatorship, fascist takeover. That's exactly what this is, and we've given plenty of evidence about that. So let me go on to some breaking news that is very disturbing.
May I just suggest one thing before we move on? Class, so it's real easy. Just go to the manager, ask for the manager, say, I'd like to buy in bulk. I've got my pickup truck right here, and if we can agree on a price, I'm good to go. We can load it up, and here's how many I want to buy. That's how I do it, and it seems like Rich Scheben does it the same way. But there's one caveat I'd like to suggest that you consider. We bought some chicken feed, and we bought it in bulk from the same company we've been buying it from for years. All of a sudden, the chickens won't eat it. They won't eat it. Literally, they take the chicken scratch, which has all different kinds of seeds in it, and they will kick out the corn. They go into the feeder and they kick out the corn outside the feeder because they don't want it. They literally want it out of their feeder. It's like, what is this doing in here? We're not eating this stuff. Literally, that's what's happening. And what I found is that cracked corn is now something that the chickens won't eat. So before you buy feed in bulk, make sure that your animal will eat it. Okay? And we do buy in bulk. We absolutely do. So keep it cool and keep it dry. We keep our feed in 55-gallon drums, steel drums with resealable lids to keep the moisture from entering and exiting and oxidizing and causing bugs to just start up growing inside the feed. That's what we do. We do buy in bulk. Keep it cool and dry. Try to keep it in some kind of a container that vermin won't eat holes through the bags. Keep it off the floor. You can put it on a pallet, but keep it off the floor, whether it be a concrete floor or a dirt floor, whatever it is. Keep it off the floor. Okay. But the bottom line is, some corn is now on the market, and your animals will not eat it. So we ended up bringing 400 pounds of feed back to the feed store, and we said they won't eat it, and they couldn't believe it. It's like, really? You want us to take it back? Absolutely. It's inedible. So keep that in mind. Any comments, Rich?
Well, no. Like I mentioned earlier, we got to get open pollinated or organic seeds. A lot of these corns are laboratory Monsanto chain seeds, where a lot of the proteins and amino acids and enzymes have been changed. And we've talked when GMO first came out years ago how it's even got this proof that it changes your DNA. You got to go as pure as you possibly can. So with that said, I would like to talk about some breaking news, Vince, that's very disturbing. Another coup plot has been discovered by the Pentagon and exposed the Democrats' coup plot against President Trump. General Milley, which is a senior member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, basically was threatened by the Democrats, and this has to be verified. I've read this on several sites now. This happened in the last couple days, that he's been threatened. If he doesn't arrest Trump, he will be arrested. This is a Democrat coup plot. This is treason. This is sedition. You know, just like a couple articles I have here, Comey and McCabe lied under oath about start of crossfire hurricane. Obama and Biden spied on your president, as per Richard Grinnell. This isn't new information. There's more and more evidence coming out about these several Democrat coups. Folks, we need to ask, where is Barr and Durham? Where are the arrests? Where are the indictments? What the heck is going on? Is everybody in every institution, especially in big corporate America and big government, is everybody bought and paid for, including our intelligence agencies? Is everybody bought and paid for? What is morale like? I want to know. Where is everybody? What about the rule of law? How can we have multiple coups? We can have sedition and treason and espionage wide open, where everybody can see it. Everybody in the country knows that Hillary Clinton and the DNC paid for the fake, made-up, Steele, P dossier. Everybody. Every baby in the forest knows about this. Where are the arrests and the indictments? All right, next article. Former city council with Trump-Pence sign in his front yard murdered. Don't you love the peaceful protest? Next article. It's showing up in the polling. CNN's Lemon says Biden needs to stop ignoring riots because they're helping Trump. Some of these things that the Democrats say are so stupid, it's very difficult to comment on this. These are the people who are inciting the riots. President Trump has mentioned, I will help you. I will bring out the National Guard. It's analogous to what I've said before. When President Trump crossed the DMZ to make friends with North Korea, which President Obama said was our biggest threat, what did the Democrats say as per the focus groups in the polling? They said 70% says they don't want to be friends because it makes Trump look good. We have to be Americans. We can't have a different set of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group we're in. It's just like processed corn. It doesn't work. You don't get the nutrition. We have to have a rule of law, the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. Next article, Chelsea Clinton, I want white children of privilege to erode that privilege over time. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Chelsea Clinton gets a job right out of college for almost $1 million a year, and her mother's been flying around the world talking about white privilege and the carbon footprints, but doesn't mention the elite Hollywood and the elite, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Soroses, all these people. No, they talk about selling sanctioned narratives about the little people, white privilege and carbon footprints. It has nothing to do with white privilege. It's not about white male. Because I've mentioned many times, how come then Bezos and Buffett and Gates and all these and Zuckerberg and all these people, how come their money is not confiscated? It's not about white privilege. It's about eliminating the middle class and creating a caste system and having the very few small percent of the aristocracy manage their addictions of power, money, and control against the little people. And that's against the Constitution. Next article. Obama praises the boycott of NBA players. Well, it's really easy to do, folks, because all the owners of sports teams are all gazillionaires. It's not a left-right paradigm as much as it is the aristocracy managing the serfs. And we've given thousands of examples, financial, economic, social, political, and political correctness regarding this. But let's have some more distractions. Because Bette Midler is saying that Melania, who's an illegal alien, which she isn't, who can't speak English. But yet Melania can speak probably at least 4 languages. So I think Bette Midler needs to hit the books so she can compete because she doesn't even know what she's talking about. Next article, Cardi B, I think she's a singer or something, suggests Melania Trump was a prostitute. Quote, didn't she used to sell that? And I can't mention this word in this context on the air because it has something to do with a cat, but it doesn't. Not joking. Next article, Mark Peklowski. The Democrats are prosecuting his family, but freeing violent rioters. This is the man and his wife who came out, pardon me, out of his house with a gun as they trampled all over his private property and threatened his livelihood and his life. And they're prosecuting him and freeing the rioters. You can't make this stuff up, folks. See, conformity happens in many ways. It's not just intimidation and threats and shaming, but it's also blackmail and bribery. And I think those are the two most common. Next article, American democracy or white supremacy is on the ballot for this election. No, it's not American democracy or white supremacy. First of all, we're a republic and not a democracy. But what's on the ballot, folks, is freedom, liberty, rule of law, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, versus anarchy, versus a dictatorship, versus a totalitarian fascist state. That's what we're up against.
Now,
next article.
We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. He's live in Montana. Rich, I have just a quick question for you. You have some friends, I'm sure, from your old stomping grounds, New York City. Are you finding that Manhattan is the ghost town that some of our contacts are saying it is?
Well, I know a lot of people in these Democrat blue-run cities, and everyone I talk to is they're very disturbed because they built up their businesses, they built equity in their home, and nobody wants to buy their homes in these places anymore. No one wants to start a business. And the Democrats' MO has been, let's just spend on all these bad policies to feather the nest of the elite in these positions and not help the people. Mm-hmm. Well, now President Trump is rightfully not bailing them out. And, here's one example right here, Vince, regarding the audit of the exposes the Postal Service overtime racket as Democrats seek a bailout. I urge our listeners to read this article. I don't have the time to go through. I read the whole article, but there's some really, really outrageous examples in here where people are just, without even supervisory approval, just taking advantage of being a government worker, and extra pay grew by billions even as mail delivery slowed. So hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications don't matter. More than 4,000 workers earn more in overtime than base pay. So this is happening not just in New York, where I'm from, but all over the country. I talk to people in these Democrat cities and states, and and who's hurting the most? It's not the poor. It's all the bottom 93%. The wealthy, they have multiple homes, they have yachts, they have underground bunkers, they have ranches. They don't care. They can flee at the drop of a hat. It's the middle class that have to sell their home, sell their business, which nobody wants in urban, suburban America, in these blue Democrat areas. And they want to leave, and they can't afford to because they have to sell their existing home. It's very disturbing. So I have so much information, Vince. I'm just going to rip through as much information as possible because these are so important. It makes it seem like everything's upside down. We're living in a surreal 1984 Orwellian world. Here's an article about voter fraud. A top Democrat operative says voter fraud, especially with mail-in ballots, is no myth. And he knows because he's been doing it on a grand scale for decades, mostly for Democrats. Mail-in ballots have become the latest flashpoint in 2020 elections, while President Trump and the GOP warn of widespread manipulation of the absentee vote that will swell the COVID polling restrictions, and many Democrats and the media allies have dismissed such concerns as unfounded. But this political insider who spoke on the condition of anonymity because he fears prosecution says fraud is more the rule than the exception. His dirty work has taken him through the weeds of municipal and federal elections in Patterson, Atlantic City, Camden, Newark, Hoboken, Hudson County, and his fingerprints can be found in local legislative, mayoral, and congressional races across the Garden State. That is New Jersey, folks. This is really, and he talks about how everything can be manipulated. We have to vote at the polls. And as Vince mentioned about the collaboration between China and big tech, here's an article right here. Microsoft collaborated. This is off the National Pulse. Microsoft collaborated with sanctioned Chinese military proxy to build operating system for Chinese Communist Party. Folks, we can talk about these articles for an hour each. We don't have the time. I want to get as much information out to you, the public, the patriots, the alternative media as possible. Next article, Philadelphia's Democrat Mayor Jim Kenney outlawed indoor dining and then was caught dining inside a Maryland restaurant. Folks, how many examples of hypocrisy and double standards have we offered in this show? Next article. Florida sex offender accused of abusing an infant released on bail. People, we can't have the silent majority. 11-year-old says teacher shamed her for choosing Trump as her hero. Shamed. This is conformity. We have to speak up. We can't accept this any longer. We'll be right back.
Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, please continue.
Well, thank you, Vince. And again, Vince, I apologize for taking so much airtime. I just think there's so many important articles that need to be discussed. And I'm literally omitting so many during the breaks because I can't get to all of them. But they're so important for the people to realize. 2020 election nightmare, armies of lawyers ready to fight a long legal battle over the election results. It doesn't matter. They're going to contest it no matter what. They're going to rig it no matter what, folks. This is why we need a really good turnout. We need to stick up for the rule of law. We need to stick up for the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the over 1 million combat soldiers who gave their life for our freedoms and liberties. As Kenosha burns, CNN continues mostly peaceful riots propaganda. You can't make this stuff up. The person at CNN was literally in front of flames in the background of burning buildings, and he says, mostly peaceful riots. Nobody's buying it. Nobody's dumb enough to be buying this anymore. And this is why we do news in a flash, as we call it, folks, is because there's so much propaganda, hate hoaxes, false flags, lies, gaslighting, that hypocrisies, double standards that need to be brought to light. Next article, Tesla driver was watching a movie and on autopilot when his car slammed into a parked police cruiser. You know, I'm all for new technology, folks, but if it's all about censorship and surveillance for the purpose of bribery and blackmail, I'm all for practically blowing up a lot of these satellites and big tech and go back to face-to-face communication, because when you really look at the unit of measures of despair in this country, you know, drug use, suicide, obesity, psychotropic drugs, antidepressive drugs, all the things that we talk about on a regular basis, we're not heading in the right direction. And technology, we've lost the balance between technology and nature. We're being conformed to groupthink, and we're losing the ability to think for ourselves, and too many of us are turning into followers. We need to limit technology because 99% of it is used to conform the people and eliminate our freedoms and our liberties and our ability to control our own destiny. Next article, major cities defunding police forces plan to request UN police officers to take their place to keep order. Not making this up. This is all published articles in the public domain. Next article, Virginia's Senate votes in favor of reduced penalties for assaulting police. Not making this up. Can't make this up. They want to eliminate making it a felony and make it a misdemeanor. Remember all the years that the left and the mainstream media has called us Nazis. We've been duped. They're the authoritarians. They're the pro-communists. They're the tyrannical dictatorships. They're the totalitarian fascists. They're the ones that want to control the media. They want to get rid of citizen journalists. They're the ones that want to control the police, like pro-Antifa, pro-riots, pro-violence and rape. They're the ones that want no due process. They're the ones that want government schools controlling the curriculum, which are anti-homeschool. They're the ones who want private property invasions by police. They're the ones who want strip searches. They're the ones who control the courts, lawyers, and judges and sold out the people for so-called justice. They're the ones that want voter and election fraud. I think the people can see that now. Next article. Chicago gangs form a pact to execute cops. I know this sounds like a movie. I know it sounds like I'm making it up, but these are real articles. This is happening. Next article, Indiana Democrat charged with using $225,000 in campaign funds for gambling and credit card debt. How many of us get to have $225,000 given to us to basically gamble and eliminate our credit card debt? Next article, Don Jr. condemns violence and looting during DNC. Now listen to this next article. Joe leaving basement to blame the president for riots. You can't. This is so stupid, I can barely comment on this. Every evidence in the world, and we've given so much of it, that shows the Democrats are pro-violence. They are pro-Civil War. They are pro-pot stirring. They are pro-division. They are pro-divide and conquer. They're pro-everything that is going to divide the people and keep the status quo in power. Next article. Pelosi says Biden shouldn't debate Trump. Well, of course not, because they don't have policies. They don't have talking points. It's all divide and conquer strategies. It's all professional pot stirring. Next article. Wheeler also blames Trump, created hate and division. My God. Everything that comes from the left is divide and conquer. President Trump is doing everything to create synergy, to create the United States of America. And we've given thousands of examples that show the Democrats, the deep state, and money funded from the billionaires from around the world are doing everything to create hate and division. Next article. Oregon governor blames Trump for violence after Trump supporter killed in Portland. They are literally taking what they do and blaming it on Trump and the Republicans. Next article, 4 Democrats throw chlorine bomb at a cop and nearly kill him, but yet the judge gives them probation. So much for law and order. And speaking of law and order, Lightfoot, Chicago, at least 46 people shot and 10 dead over the weekend. Don't you love gun control, Democrat blue states? Next article, speaking of, de Blasio's New York. Man attempts to rape a woman on a subway platform in front of other people while it's being filmed. And here's somebody who has some guts. We are waiting. New York Police Union demands Mayor Bill de Blasio resign at the end of the day. I don't think he resigned, but this is what we need, folks. We need police literally having your meetings. We need you not to resign. We need you to hold your ground. We need you to protect the rule of law and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We need you to, when you are getting orders to stand down, when people are doing crime in front of you, that's not being a police officer. You need people like this union chief demanding Bill de Blasio resign at the end of the day. You need to get together with your fellow police officers and protect the people and ignore what the illegal Democrats are doing, because it's all about the agenda, which we've talked about in great detail and specificity. These are all divide and conquer strategies. The same rules, laws, and accountability. Even if you're hated, to stand for principle. Most people are being embarrassed, and they're holding on to their ego, and they're basically sticking up for their group, their hyphen, and their pronoun. We need to make people realize that we've seen decades of consequences of inaction towards political correctness, and this is why we are here today. Vince, I have so many more articles, and I know I've used up most of the airtime, and I really appreciate it.
Let's just go back to one item, and this is really, really important, class. You mentioned the gangs in Chicago have formed a pact. There are about 30 gangs in Chicago, 30 different gangs that have formed a pact to shoot on sight any police officer who draws a weapon on a suspect. Any police officer. So what they are doing is, according to the FBI, what these gangs are doing, they have agreed among themselves that if they have video evidence of a police officer pulling a gun on a suspect, a person who has not been convicted of anything, just pulling a gun, there is a shoot-on-sight agreement among these gang members, of which there are about 30 or more gangs that have agreed they'll execute the police.
That's correct.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted to flesh that out just a little bit so that our class understands this is warfare. This is warfare. And it can only get worse. That's massive escalation.
That's why I mentioned those articles earlier about the medical examiner report with fentanyl and George Floyd. That's why I mentioned about, hidden guns and hidden knives. That's why I mentioned about, people who are, if they shoot, did they shoot with self-defense? That's why I talk about when someone commits suicide and the people are told that this person was murdered, so more riots, looting, and murder, rape, and mayhem breaks out. We need to get the facts first. Now, this is very disturbing about what's happening in Chicago right here, but it just shows that the mayor is not fit for the job, that she's compromised somehow through bribery, through blackmail, somehow. And keep in mind, President Trump has offered every one of these Democrat cities and mayors and governors to come in and help the people. When people are losing businesses, losing homes, being threatened, being intimidated, losing the ability to control their own destiny, losing the ability to control their own safety, losing everything they got in their businesses, in their equity, in their homes. And it's pretty obvious that the Democrats' agenda is to create a civil unrest, a civil war, and we've given so much evidence of this, Vince, over the last several months. It's so obvious, and this is why the silent majority needs to speak up. We all need to do something. We got to forget about the left-right paradigm and realize the Democrat Party is funded by the world globalists in order to eliminate the United States, and that's why I mentioned a lot of these articles from the UN. This is major, major stuff. When major cities are defunding police forces and they openly plan to request UN, United Nations police officers to take their place to keep order. This is black shirts. This is brown shirts. This is the Red Guard. This is all the things that have happened in history. This is very dangerous times that we are living in, and if we don't know history and we don't do the reading and research, we will repeat it, and America is going to fall. Vince?
I had a question. It's just a question to illustrate who Rich Scheben is. Rich, my understanding is that you're a Stumpy. Is that right?
That's right, a Stumpy. That's correct.
Okay, class, let me tell you what a Stumpy is. You know what a tree stump is, right? Well, when you cut down a tree, the stump is left. Well, a Stumpy is a loving name for someone who has studied forestry at the university. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are you a SUNY Stumpy?
I went to a small school up in the Adirondack Mountains called Paul Smith College. And that was my plan B to get me to Montana. And I tried to get a job with the National Forest Service, and they told me they would not hire me as a white male, and they hired 2 girls in the waiting room with no experience and no education.
Okay.
So
well, I know. Okay, I know some SUNY Stumpies. SUNY stands for State University of New York, and I know the curriculum that those guys and gals studied, and it's the hard sciences, organic and inorganic chemistry. It's not an easy way out. It's a tough curriculum. We'll be right back. Class, just as an aside, a degree in forestry is a science degree. It's not an arts degree. So if you get a bachelor's in forestry, it's a bachelor's of science in forestry. And just as a quick point of information, it typically takes 4 semesters at the college level, university level, of biology, 2 semesters of, 3 semesters of chemistry, 1 semester of communications, 1 semester of economics, 1 of English, and 6 of forestry. Then you have advanced math and statistics. So then that's not all it takes. That's just the minimum special professional courses required to get a degree in forestry, a bachelor's of science. I just wanted to share that. So in case you're wondering where Rich Scheben comes from, he comes from that background as part of his education. Not all of it, just 1 of his 3 degrees. I just wanted to share that, Rich.
Well, I appreciate it, Vince, but, I ended up, after the Forest Service told me that I couldn't get a job as a white male, National Forest Service, I got my last degree in at the University of Montana here in marketing. And, I want to mention just a few. We only have a couple of minutes left. I just want to mention a few things that we need to act like citizens who expect the government to work for us, not the other way around. None of us at USA Prepares are anti-government. We're anti-too big, too corrupt, too overspending, too incorporated, too elite control, manipulative, and anti-constitutional government. We have to judge by hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications, merit, and job performance, and the willingness to help others. And if we continue to have the surveillance and tracking and big tech going against the American people, especially for misinformation, I can guarantee you all leisure and hospitality businesses will never come back. That's hotels, restaurants, it doesn't matter, because people are tired of being tracked. If these hotels and restaurants don't go to cash only, or at least give people the option to go cash, no one's going to want to go to these places, because the technocracy is going to, again, censor, surveil, control all the people. And people don't want this, because just like the misinformation about this coronavirus, I want you to think about what I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to be redundant on this. The CDC quietly updated the COVID number to admit that only 6% of the 154,000 deaths recorded actually died from COVID. That's a little over 9,000 deaths. I want you to think about that. Most people had comorbidities, morbidities, and were overwhelmingly, of the majority, were advanced age. Think about the upheaval, the loss of business, the riots, the businesses who were burning down, the people who were losing equity in their homes. Think about this totalitarian, communist, dictatorship, fascist, authoritarian system. The Nazis are on the left, and they're funded by them, and they need to be arrested. And that's why we need to call out Barr and Durham. Where the heck are you people? This is, folks, this is a major takeover. A major takeover, not just of the world or of America, but the West and the rest of the world. This is very dangerous stuff. We need to act. We need to read and research. We need to speak up. Please stop thinking this is a left-right paradigm. It's not. It's an aristocracy controlling the serf paradigm. And we are eliminating, getting our options eliminated by by the false guise of what group we're in, and people have been insulted, degraded, and disrespected along the way. People of certain groups have their work ethic, their ability, and their intelligence insulted. They're using media propaganda, subliminal messaging, professional wordsmithing, and Hegelian dialectic in order to take us down verbally. They're swaying public opinions. They're holding on to the narratives at every cost. They're race baiting around every corner, and we are losing ground. We need to call out victim group status and protectionist group status. When you lower the bars of standards and expectation for a job based on what group you're in, you don't empower that group, that individual, or the nation. You destroy it. You make it more submissive. You make them break their will. You never, ever lower the bars of standards and expectations and give opportunity and knowledge. You cannot reward mediocrity and make a country better. Vince, I was on a rant today. I appreciate you allowing me to do that.
I've got one comment. I got one comment, Rich Scheben. You know, it used to be back in the 60s when you bought a new car, you ordered a new car, you'd say, boy, I hope it's not made on a Monday or a Friday. I hope it was made on a different day, like Wednesday would be an ideal day. And here's why. Because on Friday, the assembly line workers were shoddy. They couldn't wait to go home. On Monday, they were hungover from the weekend. So you didn't want a Monday or a Friday car. That's what Rich is talking about. Mediocrity. Lowering the standards. You want a Wednesday car. And there's no substitute for top quality workmanship. That's what Rich is talking about. And we've lost it.